life in the city. Anywhere I go, DC's coming with me. I spent my whole damn life in the city. I can go for broke, but the capital is in me. I spent my whole damn life in the city. Anywhere I go, DC's coming with me. I spent my whole damn life in the city. I can go for broke, but the capital is in me.
Welcome, everyone, to District Divided, a DC sports podcast. More specifically, a Washington Commanders podcast. I am Amit. That is K-Dot. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Nathan Parry, who I'm sure you all already know from Ref the District. So real quick, Nathan, how are you doing today? Thank you for joining us.
Fantastic. I appreciate you guys having me on. I've been a long time supporter of the channel, and I think it's about time that you invited me on. I mean, I didn't understand what I had to do to get on. I figured, Ref the District's gotten popular enough. Surely these guys would feel like I'm worth having on, but maybe not as good as some of my co-hosts over there in Ref the District. But it's going to be fun today because I don't have to lead things. That's your job there, A-Train. You get to run it, and I get to just run my mouth, which is usually I gotta stay on the narrow path of not giving an opinion, letting Trev and Stoner talk. But today I get to let my hair down. It's gonna be great.
I'm very excited for you. We're thrilled to have you on. The reason it took so long, so for those that don't know, Ref the District, we actually did a collab. This is when we got Carson Wentz. Okay, so this is a while back.
Wow, yeah.
And we reviewed the film for years, right? And we were like, all right, who do we want? Which one of the three? And we landed on you, Nathan. It was the obvious choice, actually. We had to be sure. But thank you so much for coming.
He's trying to be PC about it. I just didn't want to screw up your guys' revenue. You were a little too controversial over on these parts. We want to make sure that you understood the risk you were taking coming in here and doing this. But we're all good. Let's see if we can screw that money up, though.
He signed the waiver, so we're good to go. And this episode, guys, we made some roster moves, so that's probably the biggest news in terms of the transactions, some ins, some outs. Could you anticipate another move being made? So I'm going to ask these two gentlemen, of course. Then we're going to talk about training camp observations in general. So plenty of beat reporters over there, fans over there. There are plenty of tweets to dissect, to go through, things like that. Yeah. I think we got a couple of clips of Raheem Morris talking about Dan Quinn, I believe, K-Dot, is what was mentioned. So we're going to get to that. And then are we feeling the hype, right? So brand new time here in the organization. Are we feeling the hype? We get to the comment mailbag and after the pod, as we always do. But before we begin this video, if you could please like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, comment as you always do, and K-Dot.
It's a very special one today. I'm not going to go too crazy with it, but because the microphone just won't hear it if too loud, But it's time to share this shit. Share this shit. And also, make sure you subscribe to Ref the District of the Believe Network and wherever you listen to your podcast. Oh, I probably should have gotten back off of that one. Look, the last word had nothing to do with the Ref the District, okay?
It was perfect. It was perfect to kind of, as a mistake goes, what you were thinking in your head was just on screen, but it's great. No, we appreciate the love there for Ref the District.
Yeah. So no, and seriously, guys, do subscribe. I'm sure all of you already do, but in case you don't, please do. They run an absolutely fabulous channel over there. So why don't we go ahead and get into it? So first topic is going to be the roster moves that were made. Now, they were pretty minor moves overall. I think a lot of people would agree on that, but moves nonetheless, and maybe signal what the coaching staff is thinking about. So we picked up two players, Byron Pringle from last season, wide receiver, and Riley Patterson for some kicking competition for Ramiz Ahmed. And then we released Dax Milne and Damiere Byrd. So we dropped two wide receivers. We picked up one wide receiver, and we picked up a kicker. And so, Nathan, being the guest of honor, why don't we go ahead and start with you? Did you make anything significant of the moves in your mind? What were your thoughts on it?
I was surprised a little bit that Byrd was being cut, namely because that was a player I think they brought in, and some people were really excited about him and the potential that he could bring. But Byron Pringle was good for Washington last season as a wide receiver 5, and he has some return ability. So, having him back on the squad as one of these depth guys, I don't know if he's going to make one of the 7 wide receivers I figure Washington's going to keep. But Dax Milne was an easy cut, which was interesting to me because Dan Quinn talked about how there's no sacred cows right? And like, you can cut anybody. Like, is Dax Milne really a sacred cow? Like, this guy was always the back end of a roster. I get kind of saying like, hey, we're not beholden to people who are drafted, right? And we're going to talk, I think, a little bit about that as we get into camp and maybe some additional roster moves that I can see coming up. But yeah, Dax Milne, Mr. Steel Girl, yeah, he's gone. Happy, I know he just got engaged, so partly a little bummer for him that he's going to have to, maybe not fund the fancy venue that he was looking for, but no surprise. In the kicking competition, from what I've heard, it's not been going well. The competition's going well, I guess, but the kicker that they have not being good, Ramirez, right? And so bringing in another kicker, and they've been going toe to toe. I think they're right now 9 of 10, both
combined 9 of 10, correct,
as of this morning, Friday morning. So we'll see how it goes. My guess is the guy we brought in, Patterson, is going to be the kicker going into the season, unless they bring in a third option. But I don't expect the kicking competition to last much longer, probably a week at the tops.
Got it. And so again, just as a reminder for folks, Ramiz Ahmed coming from the UFL, they've got the new kickoff rule. They've already sort of done that in that league, so there's a slight advantage there. However, Riley Patterson kicked in the NFL last season with the Browns, with the Lions, so he's got that experience in those NFL games. Nathan giving the edge currently to Riley Patterson. K-Dot, over to you. What did you make of the moves?
Yeah, I mean, no huge surprises, I don't think. This felt very special teamsy across the board. I mean, also, there's been so much room you can have on any one roster for your, how do you put this? Your scrappy, upstart, playbook type wide receivers.
Culture guys, dude.
Yeah, culture guys. Those glue dudes. That's not that they're too athletic, but they study the playbook and they're really scrappy. There's a Luke McCaffrey. So I mean, Dax Milne, your time was numbered, buddy. But outside of that, I think I've heard so many things as far as Byron Pringle. Even when we got here, there was this bit of a hype around it. Like, hey, maybe he'll get a time to shine here, this, that, and the other. So I mean, he's somebody to look out for. But I mean, from what I've been hearing overall, and we're going to get into more of the training camp talk, is that from what I've been hearing from a wide receiver standpoint, there are a couple guys that are really standing out where everybody else is sort of, there's middling information about everybody else, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like the more the merrier as far as the competition, especially with the way you hear this coaching staff speak. And then the kicking thing. I mean, as soon as you remember, even a week after we got out of bed, there was like, we brought in a bunch of guys, a bunch of guys. It's one of those things where the kicking competition is going to be until they feel secure enough. That's one of those positions. I mean, there's no limit to how many you'll bring in and bring out. Just figure it out. You just want somebody that's not going to let you down. So until they find that security in somebody, I don't expect it. I mean, I never really have a timeline on it as far as kicker. I just think it's one of those positions you do what you need to do.
Yeah, completely agreed. And we will see how the kicking competition goes. Of course, plenty of time for both kickers to be able to step up and go on a little bit of a hot run. I suspect that's the person they'll end up taking as camp and preseason progresses over here. On the subject of Byron Pringle, I think it is kind of cool that he's been brought back, because we did have Eric Bieniemy as our offensive coordinator last season. Pringle comes from Kansas City. You go, okay, this is one of his guys. Fine, so be it. And he ends up having a couple moments in the regular season. It's cool to have him back now with Bieniemy gone. So just to lend credence to the point that he is his own individual player. It wasn't just brought in because of a Kansas City connection or anything like that. He's being brought in by this new regime as well. We'll go ahead and see how he does. Again, like Nathan had mentioned, this is like maybe a wide receiver, 7. Like, does he make the team? We don't know.
He might be a more polished De'Ami Brown.
It's possible. That is certainly possible. And De'Ami Brown is probably somebody to look out for as well through training camp. We got a lot of receivers, and clearly the movement and the roster at the receiver position suggests that spots are open. We're going to see what happens. Actually, on that note, random question for you guys. Not too random. Mm-hmm. Nathan, do you have a wide receiver, maybe a bit more under the radar, maybe wide receivers 5 through 7 that you do really like?
And 5 through 7, probably, not right now. One I would highlight for some people, everyone assumes it's going to be Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, and Luke McCaffrey.
Yeah.
And I just feel like they're not giving Zacchaeus enough credit. This is a signing that this regime brought in, and he was essentially Eagles wide receiver 3 last year. And I see good things coming from him. I don't think he's wow, ability. And but I wouldn't be surprised to see him play a bigger part than people are kind of giving credit to right now. If you're going to go deeper, Tinsley made a great play, I guess, today at
Shook
training
somebody.
camp. Yeah. Nikki not telling us who.
Right.
So most people assume Forbes. Somebody who was there said it might have been Blue Kelly, but it doesn't matter. Tinsley is, I know, a fan favorite as well. Last year, a lot of people, from the Penn State crew really liked him. But Tremaine's been going on as another name to kind of he's an interesting one because unlike a lot of our wide receivers, Tremaine has height. So that could be a difference maker for him being taken on the roster. One name I will say stop falling in love with is the kid from Georgia.
Rosemary Jackson.
Yeah, I know that he made the really great one-handed grab and people like his size and everything like that. He is just slow compared to all the rest of the wide receivers. He's not going to get separation, and being a big body wide receiver like that doesn't get separations, not NFL caliber. So, he might be a practice squad guy, but a lot of people are like, oh, this guy's going to be good. No, this is your Kelvin Harmon. This is your
kid. I loved him.
Cam Sims. This is your guy who, I know everyone loves him, right? Everyone loves that wide receiver 5 through 7. And he would, that's his dream goal, is to be wide receiver 5 through 7, but he is practice squad at best.
No, that's fair. And I like the shout on Olamide Zacchaeus, who has been having a good camp so far. At least if you follow the same tweets, which I'm sure, Nathan, it looks like you and I are. Like the guy's making plays so far through camp. K-Dot, same question to you before we move on to training camp observations.
The question was, is there anyone 5 through 7 that I love?
Yeah.
No. So
you can just move on. That's fine.
I mean, that's the thing is there's no one that really screams off the page to somebody like, oh, wow, I just want it to work out. I mean, outside of what's at the top of the wide receiver position, I find myself just frustrated with our wide receiver position from years going back. I just want somebody to step out and show out. I mean, if you're looking at it, Zacchaeus is the guy, like Nathan said, that they brought in. He's shown flashes, has league experience. He's a dude that I'm like, okay, if there's anybody that I'm expecting of that 5 through 7, like, all right, I'm putting money to make the roster. He's probably the guy. As far as any one of those that I feel the most secure that he'll make the roster. But outside of our known stalwarts and Luke and Crowder, maybe. Yeah, man, just prove it in training camp and preseason, man. Just show me, get me excited. I'm not that excited just yet.
It's interesting, K-Dot, sorry to take over a little bit, but you said that for years you felt the wide receiver core hasn't been good. I would have said going into last season, Washington had one of the top trios, right? When you look at going into the season, McLaurin, Dotson, and Curtis Samuel, that was an exciting trio. It didn't do anything with EB's offense.
Right.
But I do agree that after a sophomore slump, you have Terry McLaurin and a bunch of guys who are kind of question marks. No one's taking that 2 spot right now, but I wouldn't say for years it was a problem. I think that's one of the reasons why Adam Peters was excited to come here, was that was one of the rooms that looked pretty good at the top end. I agree. The back end, De'Ami Brown and Crowder are exciting.
That's the clarification. It's the top end I've been fine with. I'm talking about the guys that excite me when they get on the field at certain points that have happened at when you're watching certain teams or you're a fantasy football guy, you're looking at betting, you're like, all right, this dude's a burner. If he gets on the field, look at him to make something happen in the end zone. Maybe he's got some height. I know some people, we talk about Cam Sims or anything that we get hype about. Anytime that most of those guys who I'd say 4 through 7 or whatever that's been on the roster, I've just been like, okay, there's just nobody blows my skirt up necessarily. But I guess that's kind of the point. That's why they're 4th through 7th as far as wide receiver. But I just want to see some sort of consistency from any of them. I want to see that, hey, it's a guy that we can rely on. He's clearly not as talented as Terry or Jahan or Luke, but he's somebody that I know is going to be here on the roster. He's going to be able to contribute, maybe get me some first downs here and there if he's on the field. If we go 4 wide, if we go 5 wide, I'm looking out for this guy. I just haven't had that sort of feeling. But no, top of the receiver core, yeah, I've been solid on it. I mean, Jahan Dotson, we'll get more about him when we talk about the training camp stuff. But I mean, outside of last year, which he had his flourishes and moments, there's a bit of a question mark. I wouldn't even say a question mark, maybe an asterisk next to him. Is he going to live up to what he did rookie year? Terry's the only dude that I look across the board and I'm like, no questions. I'm good.
Yeah.
He's
No,
solidified in my mind.
totally fair. Why don't we go ahead and move on to training camp observations in that case, now that we are talking a bit more about the guys we know are going to be here, we know are going to make plays this coming season. Nathan, this is going to be a fairly open-ended one for you. What has stuck out to you through what you're hearing about training camp? It could, and legitimately, you can say anything. It could be something Dan Quinn said in an interview. It could be, the Terry and Jayden connection so far. It could be anything. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
I think the one thing I think most of us have been focused on is the offensive line. And, the thing that's kind of stuck out to me is how they're tooling that right now. Wiley's dealing with an injury, so he's been in and out on the right tackle. Brandon Coleman, the rookie, has been seen at right tackle, but they put pads on and he's being the left tackle. I think he's been the starting left tackle now with the ones all week long. And so, that's a great thing. I mean, there's still some concern, he's been beat. There's a clip of him allowing, I think, Farrell maybe to go around him and possibly get a sack of Jayden Daniels, who did get the ball away to Eckler for a touchdown, but there might have been a sack. But the thing is I mean, he won his one-on-ones on Thursday, and he's athletic, and there's a lot of good things around him. So I'm probably focused a lot on those big guys because of Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels looks the part. He's been doing what needs to be done. He doesn't look bad. There's a lot of glowing reviews. And you might actually say that there's probably too much. Like we're hiding the bad right now. But the bad to me was whether or not this offensive line was going to be able to protect him. Because the last thing we need is a repeat of 2012, where we have an exciting young QB who gets injured. Right now, RG3 was injured during a run, and Nagata just completely split his leg in half. But Griffin was running because the line, opened up a hole for him. And I want this line to open up holes for Jayden Daniels and then him be safe or be good in pass protection, which I think they will. We're not dropping back 55 times a game. So can Brandon Coleman hold his own 25, 30 times a game? Is it okay if he slips up? I mean, he's a rookie, but I mean, right now he's looking like he's going to be the starting left tackle. And if Adam Peters missed on the entire rest of the draft, all the guys that we love, Johnny Newton, Santa Strill, those guys don't hit, but Brandon Coleman hits, this draft is a success.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. If Jayden hits, first and foremost, it's a success.
Sure. Yeah. That
if
needs
Jayden and Brandon hit, oh my goodness, it's already an unbelievable draft, to your point, let alone the other guys who we definitely do have faith in. K-Dot, same question to you, or same open floor to you, if you will. What have you noticed so far that's caught your eye?
Yeah, I mean, offensive line is where everybody's eyes are going to go to, right? I mean, it was the one thing that, as far as what we were seeing, as far as the sacks that were happening last season, whether or not what you want to attribute it to, I put most of it on Eric Bieniemy and his play calling. But then beyond that, we still did know that regardless, even if Jacoby went in there and looked a little bit better, the offensive line was not playing up to snuff, right? It wasn't the top. It wasn't the top echelon thing. So, I mean, and then knowing that you draft Jayden Daniels, the last thing you want to do is hurt your brand new shiny toy. So, of course, we're looking there. I do like that it seems as though they've kind of solidified the interior of the line. It looks like that's not changing a whole lot. So, Allegretti, Biotish, and Cosme, they look pretty stout.
Cosme 88 on Madden. We believe in him. Don't worry about it.
It's legit. Yep. Even though a lot of people don't see it necessarily when you come to play.
And Madden ratings. I think it was like top 6 even, wasn't he? He was pretty up there as far as a guard.
Yeah. Brandon who? Beyond those guys, Coleman, the hype, the stuff that I'm hearing about Coleman is getting me excited. I don't think anybody thinks that Coleman was supposed to come out the gate and be, I mean, I don't think anybody knew exactly what the hell he was going to be other than maybe versatile. And which proves
a lot of people are saying he's a guard.
Yeah,
right.
Still could be. Who knows?
Great. But I like the idea that they're moving him around a lot and just kind of seeing where it is. We're still really, really early in training camp. But if Coleman's holding his own, it's like, hey, there might be some growing pains, but we can leave him out there. He's going to learn. Then that to me, we're light years ahead of where I even thought we were being. I didn't think Coleman was probably going to see the field until maybe halfway through the season, like kind of slow roll, and maybe injuries were going to be the thing that got to him. So that's very, very cool to see. outside of that, I mean, it's some of the wording that I'm hearing as far as on the offense. Like I think it was either Eckler or Robinson got interviewed by somebody, and they was talking about how Cliff Kingsbury's really, really stressing a balance as far as on the offense.
Brian Robinson. Yeah.
It was Brian Robinson. That to me, especially after last season, hell yes. The fact that you have somebody that's cognizant of it and he's like, no, I'm maintaining balance. It's something that's important. We're all going to be aware of it. That's huge. Knowing that everything I'm hearing about the running backs, John Keim just did his pod. Somebody asked him point blank, hey, what are the running backs looking like compared to last year? And he's like, and they asked him, does it look better? And he's like, yeah, there's no doubt. There's absolutely no doubt that we're definitely better than where we were last year. That alone screams volumes to me. The Jayden Daniels piece of it all, as far as the feedback that I'm getting there from them, from the team and from everybody, and it feels very like ultra positive, as Nathan alluded to. The only thing that I feel really good about all that is I've seen this team go out of their way to make sure that we did not give Jayden Daniels the savior complex, right? He wasn't here to come in and save the entire team. So if there's anything, I think that if you're going to hear anybody in the organization, it's making sure they don't kill his confidence, but I don't think anybody's doing anything to blow any smoke about Jayden Daniels or to make people have uneasy or crazy expectations going into the season. So I feel good about what I'm hearing about Jayden Daniels. One of the more other things on defense, I'm concerned about what I'm hearing as far as some of the defensive ends, the pass rushers. Apparently nobody's really screaming out as far as that goes. I know that there's been a lot of talk about Davis and what he's been doing. And they're going to have him at linebacker this week or next week. But I think that we talked about Davis being more of a pass rusher, and that excited us. But I think that what people need to look at Davis is he's 235 pounds. He's not going to be beating guys pass rushing with a bull rush or something. There's going to be more if he's a mismatch guy. It's going to look like what it is they're doing on defense, kind of slot him around. You want to see where he's at with everything. Linebackers are, I'm hearing nothing but glowing reviews about the linebackers. Frankie Louisville's all over the place. Bobby Wagner's just Bobby Wagner. You don't really hear a lot about him because he's Bobby Wagner, and you know what you're going to expect, and it's all good. We know he's not going to be trash, so fine. And then Jeremy Chin is the other dude that I keep hearing things about, and I'm like, yeah, I like those were the two moves that Louvu and Chin. If those two guys are screaming off the page of training camp, we're in a good situation. I feel great about that.
Yeah. No, and a couple things stuck out to me from both of your answers. First off, 3 for 3. Brandon Coleman consistently being the left tackle and consistently running with the ones is excellent news no matter how you look at it. Because the strength of this team is the interior of the defensive line, but we brought in a number of pass rushers that are probably giving him different looks, and he seems to consistently be able to do his job. Now, there was the one clip, like you had said, Nathan, where he gets beat like a drum immediately, but he's also a rookie. Like when we talk about the offensive line, we want them to be serviceable. Ideally, they're above average. Ideally, they're great, of course, but serviceable will be enough. They're going to get beat now and then. So a friendly reminder to people who are on social media going, oh my God, you got beat. Like that happens in football. Like the Ravens also have a so-so offensive line. Believe it or not, the San Francisco 49ers outside of Trent Williams have a so-so offensive line. It's a friendly reminder to people that it can be hard to get a really
top
good
5 Hall of Fame talent on the line. Yeah, it's not the easiest. I agree with you. I'm going to cut you off here. I apologize again.
Yeah. Oh, you're fine.
The hate that Charles Leno got was just ludicrous. Like he was perfectly serviceable. Is he great? No. But if Brandon Coleman could just replicate Charles Leno, then we're going to be fine. Especially as K-Dot, you mentioned different scheme with Cliff Kingsbury to what we saw with Eric Bieniemy. There's a lot that goes into the line play. In fact, if you actually look at more of the numbers for the line and don't look at the volume stats, because volume stats are misleading. When you're dropping back 55 times out of, in a game and you let up, 2 pressures, that's 2 pressures out of 55. That's really not that bad. Right. That's on par with a lot of other right tackles and some of the other line positions. So, but what happens is when you're dropping back that much, the volume stats just pile up. And so it's like, oh yeah, Andrew Wiley sucked. He let on the most pressures for right tackles. But then when you look at statistically, he was only giving up a pressure every 5% of the snap.
Like a pressure per drop back, if you will.
Yeah,
if you look at it that way.
Yeah. When you start looking at those, the line really wasn't as bad. So I'm with K-Dot that the scheme here is going to be so much more important in improving things. And you're going to see a Brandon Coleman who doesn't have to be Trent Williams.
Right.
He just has to be Brandon Coleman, a 3rd round pick that doesn't give up, isn't a turnstile, and things will be just fine.
Schematically, I think one of the reasons at least K-Dot and I are excited about Cliff is OC versus like, a head coach role is that he can, one, focus on the offense. 2, when he was head coach at Arizona, they did have a number of rushing attempts, right? They were either middle of the pack or even above average in that regard. So we were speculating about balance last week when we were saying, hey, this offense, it's not going to be air raid, right? We're staying away from that word, or that phrase rather. And it looks like it's going to be fairly balanced. It was very refreshing to hear and reassuring to hear Brian Robinson say that in that interview where he's like, hey, it looks like we're going to be balanced here. I do want to put the disclaimer on Jayden. You guys know I've been a Jayden Daniels guy from the moment I put on an LSU game. I was like, oh my God, this guy, we need him. This was in December. K-Dot knows he was trying to be like, relax, buddy, because I was going to lose my mind if we didn't take him. I will say this. It is training camp, and this was a historically bad defense last season. There was a lot of turnover. So when we hear glowing reviews about Jayden, it's cool. It's also maybe against the same defense as last season, and they're working through kinks. So just a reminder to people, as excited as I want to get, like, I'm just putting that out there. Go ahead, K-Dot. Seems like you got something.
I will say the things I'm hearing about Jayden, it's not just like, oh my God, he's did you see the throw he's made?
It's the off-field stuff too, to be clear.
Well,
yeah,
it's the off-field stuff, but it's some of the stuff you're hearing about in training camp. I'm like, okay, mechanics there, hugely important. If we don't have to be worried about that aspect of things, I'm sorry, knowing our quarterback history going back a few while, yeah, great, leg up, right? Then there's also like, one of my concerns with Jayden was the sack to pass ratio. Was the sack
pressure to sack,
pressure to sack ratio, right?
Got you. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, all these damn ratios and shit.
That's what I'm here for. Please continue.
But what I'm seeing as far as what they were talking about as far as him moving out of the pocket to throw, like that stuff to me, when I look at a lot of the LSU tape, what I saw was a dude that knew he was probably faster than anybody on the field and just stayed in the pocket. And when he stayed in the pocket, he would usually stay in the pocket until it was too late. But then even when it was too late, he still knew, I'm still faster than anybody else on the field. So I'm going to be able to outrun anybody that's really basically in the pocket with me. And a lot of those times it'll 10, 15, 20 yards. He will not be able to do the exact same thing in the NFL. He'll be able to do it sometimes, but not at that same clip. But the idea that I'm hearing that he's keeping his eyes downfield and moving out of the pocket.
He was doing this in LSU, just to be clear, but go ahead.
Of course he was doing, I'm telling you, if you look at it as far as at the clip that he was doing it,
yes.
Much more was relying on athleticism more than any other.
It's not just the pressure to sack ratio. It was also his scramble rate. Right. I think it was darn near half of his dropbacks either were ended in a pressure or a scramble. And it was like an insane amount of times that he was pressured. He went to scramble because, like you mentioned, K-Dot, he just knew he was a better athlete than all those people. Look at the Florida game. He was running by guys. Those guys are fast athletes out in Florida. That's a good SEC school, and he was blown by them. And that's the kind of talent that he brings. But you're right. Those 10, 15-yard runs are going to turn into 3 and 5 yard runs. And those aren't going to be as successful. And so I'm glad he's looking downfield and he's trying to do that. I know his legs are special. What I think is more important about him doing this in training camp is the fact that he understands this is the time to look down the field and work through those progressions, right? His instincts during the game time, he might just go back into scrambling because it's there and he's going to see it. And that's his natural instincts, but he's trying to learn right now that this is training camp. I need to be passing the ball. Me getting 10, 15 yards in a practice session isn't going to do anybody any good. So keeping him downfield and doing that, and that VR system he's got must be doing wonders because he is getting the ball out quick. As you mentioned, his mechanics are just great. And his throwing motion is just beautiful, repeatable. And there's a lot to like. I think the joint practice sessions are where we really are going to see. Is this all hype from just our burgundy and gold glasses, or is this the real deal? Because people are buying in. The vets are starting to really, really buy in, and they're saying things they said things about Sam, and I did a fun little skit on Ref the District where I pulled up quotes from like the last 5 quarterbacks. And I just read off the quote about the last 5 quarterbacks. I read off the quote from whoever it was said, and you had to guess which quarterback it was said about. And
that's fantastic.
It was so hard because people were just like, "Oh, that has to be Daniels." No, that was Taylor Heineke. He just loves to sling
but those were true.
Like
those were true. When we talk, okay, so you were talking about veterans buying in. Why don't we go ahead and talk about the hype that is coming around this team? A lot of fans are feeling it, of course, and plenty of reason to. First and foremost, off the field, new ownership. They finally got their coaching staff in, their front office in place. We have this draft. You get the quarterback at pick 2 overall, former Heisman Trophy winner. Lots of reason to feel optimistic. Lots of reason to feel excited. And you pair that with what we're hearing in training camp, and a lot of fans are reasonably feeling quite excited. So the question, and K-Dot, we'll start with you here, is are you feeling the hype?
I am feeling the fucking hype. I'm feeling it majorly. So like even this conversation we just had as far as the Jayden Daniels piece, and yeah, I here's the thing. You're always in this period where you're afraid of what you're gonna say as far as the quarterback because you don't want to be completely wrong.
It's okay. I'm willing to do it. You know me.
But it's like
we have video on Ref the District of Stoner saying Sam Howell's him. You can't be afraid. You just got to go out there and do it.
Do it.
Look, I'd be the first one to tell you, I thought Sam Howell was him until he got shellacked so many goddamn times that he got shell shocked throughout. Yeah. Like, but that's the thing. Is like, this is wrong. I might hate Eric Bieniemy. I might. I might actually legit hate that dude. I really might hate him. But I mean, look, outside of I love hearing this just sort of groundswell, and there's an excitement around the team that feels legit and feels real. And
very
I think
natural,
what ends up
organic, yeah,
right. It doesn't feel as though. So, like when you talk about like the other quarterbacks and everything in here, usually what I get around this time period is them trying to sell us on something.
Yeah.
They're trying to sell us on what we're concerned about, right? I think that like everybody knows as far as the concerns that we might have that we're not really going to know what the hell is happening until they hit the field. Offensive line, probably be the major one. The defensive backs being another one, right? We're not going to know until they start playing. So like right now, what you're hearing about Jayden Daniels as far as the mentals, I love hearing that like, hey, there's no issues. He's just going to need time to go out there and to get experience. I love hearing that shit. Like that gets me excited. But everything I'm hearing as far as the team, and I got some clips I probably want to play a couple just so that everybody can understand where I'm coming from with it. But I will say this also before we get into full-blown hype mode. Devontae Adams, casual fuck you. Casual fuck you. Look, it's not that anything you said was wrong, but fuck you. You ain't got no place to say it. All right? I want to hear from you. I
still don't know. I still don't know where that came from for him. But anyway,
it felt out of place, and I do agree with K-Dot. I mean, you definitely put in the Captain America Winter Soldier meme of like he's out of line, but he's not wrong, right?
Right. But it's like, dude, how much experience you got here? Do you be saying stuff like that? Like, shut up.
Stoner looked it up. The last game he played here in Washington was 6 years ago.
And that's where it goes down to.
We left an impression, clearly. I mean, Jesus,
we also didn't
know what happened.
We took Trent Murphy over Devontae Adams. So I mean, there's that.
All right. Yeah. See that. All right. So I got 3 clips. Couple 30 seconds, whatever. Let them play. But I want you guys to hear it, and then I'll let you know why it is that I am feeling the way I am. Just about the way this team overall is running. I'm going to start with Raheem Morris on Dan Quinn.
But how you relate with people is something that people struggle with more than schematics of football.
You know, Dan Quinn gives me credit for that, but he gets the credit for being the greatest connector that I've ever been around. Right? I watched this man connect with everybody. And, like, you want to talk about a great listener? Like, Dan Quinn has the patience like I have never seen, man. And he can sit there and he can listen to it. And I don't know whether he believes you or not, but he made me believe he believed me. and that's all that really matters.
So there's that. I mean, I think you can get a glean on why I might be excited, but just to follow it up, because there's an overall theme here. Okay, let's go. Let's hear from Adam.
you can imagine when you're a freshman in college, when you're coming in with the recruiting class, you're coming in, anybody who's going into college, anybody who's going into high school, you have a group of people that you're doing it with. So you're all doing it together, and you're looking for each other for support, helping each other out when you're down, picking each other up, encouraging each other. So that bond is a special bond. I've seen it happen amongst a lot of teams, and those guys are going to be your guys you're going to lean on in tough times. And
all right, stick with these two for just a second. Let you know why I'm excited about what it is going on. Right, this shit feels real. Okay, it feels real from the top all the way down. This is who we are now. It doesn't feel like I'm being sold anything. When we talk about when Adam Peters got hired, and as soon as he got hired, I had my rankings of coaches, right? It's hilarious hearing my number one coach, Raheem Morris, talk about my number two pick, Dan Quinn. It's fucking glorious. But it's, what did we need here? Great communication, a team atmosphere, everybody on the same page, going towards the same goal, right? Not this compartmentalized bullshit. Not Ron Rivera. The offensive coordinator, I'm just kind of stay out of here. That's his job. I don't need to. Fuck that, right? Or you get a situation where you got Jay Gruden doing whatever nefarious shit that he's doing down in Ashburn that rubbing everybody the wrong way. Shout out to the secretary and Bree Bibbs. You know what I'm talking about. Beyond that, it's awesome to see that you hear these buzzwords that feel like mantras. They don't feel like, but they feel like mantras. It feels like this is what they have to be. Like when you hear Adam Peters
generalized is what it is, right?
But, yeah. Right. You look across Ashburn and you see, like, anybody that has watched the Commander's log, because that last clip was from it, please do so. They talk a lot about the construction and stuff that's happening in Ashburn and what they're doing as far as when you hear that clip about the rookie class and what they're doing, the same way you would like an Army unit, the same way you have your guys that came in. They go through boot camp together, right? Like, these are your guys. We're all having the shared experience. These are my brothers. These are who I'm going to rely on. And Adam Peters is looking back through his Rolodex of teams he's been on, like, that's always been an extremely important thing. We got to do that. Then you see what they're doing in the facility. Dude, Ashburn looks good. The player hangout room. I know college football just came out. They got PlayStations in the room. These dudes, they ain't nothing to do out in Ashburn. These guys might stick around the facility, and that's what you're hearing, right? The Riggies got hanging out together. They're sticking around. They're playing video games. They're going to the pool. They're doing it. That's what you want to hear. You want to hear that there's a cohesiveness happening from the team and that everybody's marching towards the same direction. And I'll leave you with one more clip before I stop talking because I know I've kind of taken over everything.
To be able to play the sport, you have to have all 11 guys on the field do the same thing at the same time. And if you have no relationship with the guy next to you, if you don't know what they're fighting for, what their why is, if you don't share that same mindset of being the dog, wanting to compete every day, even if it's 100 degrees outside, even if humidity is at 80%, he's going to go out there and go to work.
I don't give a shit about anything else except this. It's real. I know we all want to look back at all these years with that yacht son of a bitch that was at the head of all of it, right? And it was never real. It was them trying to sell. It's okay. All your concerns, don't worry. Don't worry. PTSD, don't worry. This is something new. It's okay. The hype, to me, I don't give a fuck about anything anymore. This feels like a real football team. And I'm in. I'm all the way in. No condoms here, guys. No abortion for me. I'm in. Until I'm in. I'm all the way in.
To briefly sum up what K-Dot said, we went from House of Cards to an actual football team and organization, which is absolutely fantastic. Nathan, I'm going to throw it over to you. That's going to be a tough thing to follow up, though.
First off, I just have to say I'm a little disappointed that you bring on an American Airman and you bring up the Army. I'm actually wearing a joke Air Force shirt as retired Air Force. K-Dot, you gotta bring up the Army in front of me. I feel a little disappointed in you. That being said, 100% agree, and I've been there. And the community that they're bringing in, and you can tell the difference in units when you're in the military. The ones who do stick around and they linger and they work together and they have activities outside where they actually want to be, part of each other. You start to really build these bonds And those teams, those units are so much stronger than the ones that go in, do their job, and then leave. And it's fine, for some people to do that, right? If you got family, if you got something else going on. But as a leader in the military, I always made sure I knew what was going on with my people and where they were in their lives and what their dreams and what their hopes are, what their why was. And they're instilling that in Ashburn through and through. And as far as the hype and why I'm hyped and why this does feel different than previous regimes, because this has been a through line in Ref the District, because I keep bringing it up. We've said this time in and time out. When Ron Rivera and the regime came, this feels different. This is a culture change. When Jay Gruden came in, well, it's different than Shanahan. It's just what you hear. It's like Gibson was just like, they're a mess. Well, he says that because he doesn't know any better. And sure, the Patriots are probably more together over there because they just went through a regime change as well. So the thing is this does feel different. It feels organic. When people don't say the canned things. They say the things that the whole team is preaching and everybody's on the same page. And it's coming because you have Dan Quinn, who's an amazing communicator, like Raheem Morris talked about. Listen to Joe Witt Jr. talk about coaching and how it's his responsibility to teach these players, right? He knows that they have ability, and if they're not getting it, it's his responsibility. It's not that it's not the players' responsibility to learn, or to do the thing. It's to teach themselves. It's his responsibility. Their responsibility is on the field, but if they're not getting it, then Joe Witt Jr. understands it's his job to figure out a way to make them get it, because the talent's there. Adam Peters has turned over 50% of this roster. Insane number. And we're not talking back into the roster. We're talking, we're going to see an entirely different 22 starters than what we did last year. Okay. Look at the offensive line. You're going to be looking at no less than 3 different people on that offensive line. You got the most important position, QB, changed. You've got a defensive line that has been reinvigorated. Jonathan Allen looks like the Jonathan Allen we saw 2 years ago. And he wasn't bad last year. A lot of people think that he was bad. No, he was great, but he wasn't as good as he was the year before. And the defense sucked. So it's hard to sit there and say, oh yeah, this guy was good, when the whole defense was worst in the league. That's another reason to be hyped, though. We're starting from the bottom, not to quote Drake in front of K-Dot here. But we started from the bottom, right? And worst defense. The offense was like 28th out of 32. We have nowhere to go but up. And we have a bunch of facilitators who are coming in and they're saying all the right things. And I believe them in a way that I didn't necessarily believe previous regimes. When they talk about finding the best things that these players can do, I believe them. When we see that Jamin Davis is out there, they know he's athletic. They're trying him out at edge. It's not working. So they're like, hey, Dan Quinn came out and he addressed it. He's going to see linebacker on first and second down, but they really want to use him on the edge and third downs.
Which is brilliant. Please,
it's great. It's great. That transparency is fantastic. They're using my guy who I'm really hyped about, Quan Martin. They're still moving him around. I'm a little nervous about moving him around because that's why he wasn't as good in the beginning of the season, is because Jack Del Rio just kind of moved him around because he was talented and did that in Illinois. But NFL is a different game, and he struggled, and people thought he was bad. And then they started putting him in a solid position, and he starts looking good. He's the best blitzer out there. Like last year, watch it. He was the only one who could time that snap appropriately and good pressure consistently. Quan Martin's going to be great, especially alongside Jeremy Chin. I think that we have the pieces. I'm not predicting Super Bowl. I'm not going to do Trev's, 17 dubs, although we are 17-0 until I find out otherwise.
Right.
But this team is going to surprise people with how good they are. Even if they're mediocre, that's an improvement over being dead last year.
Yeah. And to the point on Quan Martin, for those that watched all the way through, I know it was a tough season last season, but when he did get time, you noticed a ball hawk as well. He was just around it. Like he was just around it, kind of a magnet. Like all of a sudden he's getting picks or at least opportunities for picks. So to your point, I do think he's going to be very good this year and surprise some people that maybe were down on him because he didn't play early on. I am also feeling the hype. I'm feeling the hype for a different reason. I was thinking about this the other day, like what makes organizations really good in the NFL? And so for me, it comes down to two groups being on the same page, and there's significant overlap between the two groups. Your owner, your general manager, and head coach, they need to be on the same page. I think it's very important that they are. We have that here for the first time in, you guys tell me, I mean, it's been forever, right? That we've had those three on the same page properly, but it's also been forever since we've had this second group also on the same page at the same time, which is GM, head coach, there's your overlap, and quarterback. And the thing that was most indicative to me that we are on the right track, guys, is when Jayden Daniels said it's about thinking less and playing fast. That is exactly what Dan Quinn said. That is exactly what Adam Peters said. So now when you have that extension of your front office, of your coaching staff, and of players, all on the same page with an ownership group that is patient and willing to give you time to do what you need to do, that is why I'm most excited. You give me those two groups on the same page, I think the sky is the limit. Is it this year? I don't know, probably not, but in terms of the vibe, in terms of the hype, I'm right there. I think we are right where we need to be right now. And I'm very curious to see how these joint practices go. To Nathan's point, we got the Jets next week, and then we've got the Dolphins after that. Any final thoughts, guys, before we move to the Comment Mailbag?
Yeah, I would say that the last time I felt team cohesiveness along these lines at all was the Joe Gibbs 2.0, which I think people underrate that. Made the playoffs 2 out of 3 years. The 1 year we don't make the playoffs is the year that Clinton Portis goes down. It was just the game had passed them by. It was just that like the schemes and stuff we were running were just too damn old. And we got Al Saunders and bingo play callers or whatever the hell it was happening by the end of it. It was rough. But you had at that point, you had an owner that like respected or was afraid of Joe and his image, so he stayed in line. That's one thing. As far as like just being able to hear a coaching staff like really give a damn, kind of strip their ego from it, right? Mike Shanahan's a damn good coach. He couldn't get rid of his ego and then infighting with Snyder, and then it overtakes everything else, right?
The thing is, Kate, right? But there was always fear involved with the owner. You didn't know what he was going to do on any given day.
I don't think Joe was ever afraid of him.
Unpredictable.
I don't think Joe was ever. I don't think.
No,
Joe
but you mentioned the vice versa, right? That Dan would have been afraid of. So, right, like fear was still existing.
I'm good with that. He needed it. But
no, I agree with that. But I'm just saying that you shouldn't have it, right?
Well, depending on your owner, yeah, you shouldn't. You should. If everything's being equal, you shouldn't have that. No. Yeah, it's just it really does. The one thing, and I noticed when Nathan was talking that I thought about was last year, and as you were even talking about Quan Martin. What I noticed last year was by the end of the season, these guys were dejected and lost. One of my favorite things to do, even prepping for these episodes, is going through training camp photos. To see the smile on Terry's face that I haven't seen in over a year, because I can't even. I'm telling you, I go back to that moment where Eric yelled at him.
Cardio. That too.
When Bieniemy yelled at him in training camp last year, that was it. That was done. It was over. You had a team going through the motion. You hear about Jonathan. It's more important than even if like, fuck what I'm feeling as far as the hype. You can tell from the players, just body language. This is better. This is better. Like you can just tell it's better. They feel as though we're all on the same page. We want to do something. I feel as though last year everybody just kind of went off into their corners. Let's just make it through this shit. Let's just get through this shit. And that's what it was. And it felt like that's overall for the Commanders or the Redskins or the Washington football team, unless there was a playoff run and the Taylor Heineke kind of united us all. That's all it ever was. I'm just going to do my job and shut the fuck up. And like, let's just, maybe I'm gone and I'll say some shit in the media that just hopefully gets me a paycheck somewhere else.
Everybody for themselves. Take care of yourself. Right. We're not doing anything here.
No, especially last season when you ship off Montez Sweat and Chase Young. Once they were clearly just giving up on the season, you can see the shift. Players played hard in that Philadelphia game, right? They knew their season was on the line. They played hard. They lost. And they see two of their players who are, premier players in that roster get shipped away. They just know like, hey, okay, we're done here, and we're just going to go through the motions. And you get a upset Jonathan Allen, who was playing like 95% of the snaps. Like, he's tired. He's out there. He's doing his part, and they're losing, and it sucks so bad to just lose when you're giving it your all, but you have a coaching staff that is incompetent. And so there's been a lot of changes, and this is the season to be hyped, right? This is the part of the season. Training camp there's only good things being said right now. So you should be excited. I get, those of us who are reserved, who want to wait to see how it plays out on the field. Sure, you can still be reserved, when that time comes. But right now, be hyped. Wear your burgundy and gold. Be excited. Be out there in the town and talk about how this time it's going to be different until it's not.
Yeah.
And we don't know if that's going to come. So right now, all we have is hope, and I stick with it and be hyped.
And a great coaching staff, a great GM from the looks of it, great ownership group. Be hype. Be hype, guys.
Facility now.
Go over
Ashburn's
to the
great.
Ashford's great.
Ashburn's
What Ashburn
good.
syndrome? Let's go over to the comment mailbag, where we have a few comments over here.
All right, Nikki.
Comment mailbag time, motherfuckers. District divided, ain't got time for no suckers. Spread the word, get in line. OGs and new G's, it's your time. And spread the gospel, cause this shit is divine. Yeah.
Shout out AI Nikki for that one. As always, we begin with Hermit Rob. Shout out Hermit Rob. One more on the Jason Wright thing, as KDOT seems a bit triggered, which I get. Look, I see you guys see the history and tradition thing a bit differently as you're both younger. As Jason is, in addition to not even being from DC, he couldn't possibly understand. As for Dan Quinn, he has a voice, but ultimately has no say in the future branding of the team. The gold pants are a clear signal of the direction they want to go, or at least try and go. The ownership group is Gen X like myself, and a huge swath of the fan base that still aren't buying tickets, and even more importantly, gear. Sales suck. It's a problem. Like it or not, Josh Harris hates the name. Mitch Rales hates the name, as he just said out loud at a get-together a week or so ago. The ownership group in general hates the name. The Redskins is never coming back. Just a fact. But I can almost guarantee the gold pants are just the beginning of bringing back the core feel of the pre-rebrand team. They know uniform changes that embrace the skins will buy time on the name change. Hell, if they just brought back our classic unis, it may pacify the older fans enough for the current name to stick. I doubt it, but it's possible. Love the show, boys. Hope the text form doesn't come off as anger, as it's anything but just an insight as to how those of us over 50 feel it matters. And I greatly appreciate that comment, Hermit. Rob, KDOT, your reaction?
Fuck you, Rob. I'm angry. No, I'm joking.
There it is.
I don't feel as though I was triggered in any way about the Jason Wright thing. Look, here's what I go to. Are the old jerseys better than the new jerseys? Yes. Are gold pants better than the white pants? Yeah, in my opinion, absolutely. Do I think that there is a better way to go about? Is there a better name in existence than Commanders? Probably. I just don't think, I still think a lot of people talking about Josh Harris and Dan Quinn and turning and twisting everything they say into the wishful thinking of they're going to get what they want. I still think is just wishful thinking. I'm not saying that it's not possible they try to find something to blend that past or whatever, but I just don't think it's of the same priority as you guys do. It's not to me. I don't think it is these guys. I don't think Dan Quinn is trying to talk secretly to this area of the fan base via what t-shirt he's wearing. I just don't think that's happening, guys.
Yeah, I'm of the belief, and Herman Rob, no, I do appreciate the thoughts, the feelings, the explanation, and everything.
Yeah,
I'm of the belief that so long as the team wins on the field, I don't think people are really going to care what the name is. I think they'll be very proud of whatever the name is, so long as we can talk shit about our team and be happy about what we see. Nathan, what about you? Do you see a rebrand coming? Are you fine with the name? Like, it's up to you.
Do I like the name? No, but I also, during that whole name adventure, I hated it. I was like, I don't care what they're called. You said they're keeping the colors. Perfect. Call them the freaking pink silkworms for all I care. Hoist a Lombardi, and we're all going to be fine. If the previous owner won Super Bowls, had teams that won Super Bowls. I guarantee you he'd still be the owner and people wouldn't care. But it
Might
didn't
still be
happen.
the
The team
name,
sucked. The
you
team
know?
was bad. Okay. The team was really, really bad. And so, we end up in this name that's not great, but it's not bad. I mean, you look at some of the other names in the league and you're just used to them. I don't think the rebrand is going to happen. I don't think they care to do a rebrand. They have so many other things to fix. One, on the field, win football games. That's priority number one. Priority number two is getting a new stadium. So they need to make sure they're in a new stadium, and it's going to happen, but it's going to be a while. It's going to be sometime in the early 30s that we're looking at that. If you're wanting a rebrand, that's probably when it's going to happen. Whenever they move into the new stadium, that's when I can see them kind of unveiling a new name, if it's going to happen. But I also just don't see that as anywhere near a necessity the way that some of the people do. I love, the history and the Redskins, and I have one of my Redskins items right back here. Okay. So I get people's tie to that. I mean, at 39 years old, most of my life, the whole wall is the burgundy and gold. I got Jonathan Allen signed jersey. I got to get hung up on the wall. Terry McLaurin is waiting to be put into the thing. But the thing is, win games on the field and people are going to come around. Okay. Will there always be a contingency that hates the name and wants the old name back? Yes, there will be. They'll eventually die out and it's not going to matter. And it's fine. And by die out, I'm not trying to be too morbid.
Understood.
I mean, their opinion.
Hey, again, this is the show to do it, though.
Yeah. Their opinion is going to either change or they're just going to become so numb. They're just not going to be involved in the team. What we need is new blood. We need people, we need the younger generation to be on board. And to do that, you need to win games. You need Jayden Daniels to be the face of the franchise, to be good. And you'd start doing that and people aren't going to care. I think Jason Wright got way too much hate. He wasn't perfect, by any means, but he was here to cover up the other guy's mess. And I don't want to say cover up, but he was here to kind of clean up the other messes, I believe, better.
And put out fires when they came up. Yeah.
Putting out fires. Were there missteps along the way? Yes. Is the name great? No. The worst part about the name, to be honest, is that they did involve Ron Rivera in the name discussion and that they gave him an opinion. Or how about all of the people who made a decision on the name are no longer with the team?
Right.
Yeah.
They don't have to live with it. That's the part.
And to your point, and I think this is probably the strongest bit, with the new stadium coming early 2030s, maybe very late 20s over here, is this going to, let's say Jayden ends up being good, or even if he wasn't, we've been the Commanders for projected out 8, 9, 10 years at that point. Are you suddenly looking for, anyway, there's a lot there, of course. We got other comments to get to, but just wanted to point that out.
To wrap it up to me, and this goes forward, I understand wanting the connective tissue. There has not been success here. There was success when they were called the Redskins. We're now at a point where you're looking at the time that they had success to the draft of Dan Snyder was such a short period in the grand scheme of history, right? So if we're looking at it overall, I just want everybody to know our success historically had not a goddamn thing to do with the fact that we were called the Redskins. Nothing. All right. If we have success now, you'll start feeling that connectivity. Oh man, we're winning again. I don't remember what that feels like. And I get it. You're just looking for those threads of trying to remember or feel of what success was like.
Right.
It had nothing to do with the name.
And so we continue. We go over to Allison New G Lombard. Shout out. And again, the context behind this video, I'd never mentioned it to begin with. We were talking about initial training camp notes. Jayden Daniels was off to a good start. Emmanuel Forbes bulked up. We were talking about stuff like that. We also mentioned the Chicago Bears, Caleb Williams, etc. So here we go. Tevin Jenkins is hurt. It's a guard over there. But Caleb Williams got much better weapons and much better protection than Jayden Daniels did. That's the first comment. There are a few, so I'm just going to rip through those, and then we could react however we want to them. Allison Lombard continues with, in terms of John Baptiste, Javonte John Baptiste, 7th round pick, my dad has Notre Dame connections, so it might be fighting Irish bias. And this is Allison liking Jean Baptiste. You carry 7 edges last season, and JB would be my edge 7. F.A. Obata, Cleveland Farrell is a massive bust as a 4th overall pick, but if he is a budget Jadeveon Clowney, he has a role. And there are a couple more, but we'll stop there for a moment. Any reactions to those? Nathan, we'll start with you.
I mean, Farrell's on a cheap contract. So, I mean, I think that he's fine. He was seeing snaps over Chase Young over in San Francisco. So, I mean, I'm not excited about any of the edge rushers, Baptiste included. I don't think that we have a stud there. You know, Montez Sweat was starting to get it, and he was always at least consistent. You know, I mean, we've had a couple of those guys that we've let, you know, walk away. Brian Arakipo, Preston Smith. Like, now we can add Montez Sweat to that, where these are guys who are not elite pass rushers, but they're B-level pass rushers. I don't think have a B-level pass rusher right now. Mm-hmm. It's not going to matter if the interior line is as dominant as we expect them to be, because what we're seeing in the NFL right now is they understand that crunching the pocket and moving the quarterback off the line is out of that pocket is more important than getting a sack, right? Like, a sack is great. And I'm not saying a sack isn't important, I guess, but people are realizing that pressuring and forcing errors on the opposing QB, if you can do that consistently, you're going to have a better defense than a defense who gets sacks. Now, sacks are still good. They end drives. I think it was something like 80% of drives that have a sack end with 0 points, which is why it was so debilitating for Eric Bieniemy's offense and Sam Howell. Is we're talking not even a field goal when you get a sack in a drive. So sacks are important. They're not the end all be all. I know some people are upset with this because people are thinking we're getting too much into the analytics now, where we're saying that pressures are better or whatnot. No, consistent pressure is better than a one-off sack.
Yeah, it disrupts the rhythm of the opposing offense first and foremost. The sack would be the bonus off of that, of course.
Mm-hmm.
K-Dot, your reaction to those two comments?
Yeah, echoing everything Nathan said as far as the defensive line, I'd say the only thing I would add is that, like, when it comes to the defensive ends, what you can do if you have the good interior pressure going, if you don't have even a B level or an A stud, what you can do is what I would say, have a lot of guys that you can rotate and throw a lot of fresh bodies. Just throw fresh bodies. We're not tired, and we'll chase you down. And if we get enough pressure and quarterbacks are up, then you'll start seeing shit happen with guys that are average or even below average. It works. Allison, the only other thing, I fucking hate Notre Dame.
Yes,
I don't understand how many teams you're going to pick that I despise.
Another green one, by the way, at times.
My God.
Celtics, Notre Dame, Eagles. Still think Austin FC's on the board for soccer. They wear green.
Is there a baseball team yet?
Oakland A's. It's not the Oakland.
Allegedly.
Just to be clear, they wear green. I mean, I don't know.
If Allison's a Red Sox fan, it's over.
All right. Well, anyway, there are a couple more from Allison, so why don't we go ahead and get into those? To give Cliff credit, he had a 50% run pass ratio at Arizona. Okay, so that's the balance that we were talking about. Washington averaged 0.4 of a yard before contact last season. The O-line needs to help. So that's one. And then the other comment, challenge accepted. This was which was coming at our coaching staff with the confidence chips. And I was like, all right, come on, let's go. That Diana Rossini's article dropped and mentioned that Howie Roseman effectively neutered Nick Sirianni by picking his coordinator. So here are the confidence chips for the Philadelphia Eagles coaching staff. We got Nick Sirianni with a 2, Kellen Moore, offensive coordinator, with a 7, Vic Fangio 9, Michael Clay 6, Jeff Stoutland 10. That's going to be their run game coordinator. Aaron Moorhead a 6, Tracy Rocker a 6. That's 46 out of 70. Brian Johnson is a great quarterback coach, especially based on his relationship with Hurts. Sirianni was over-involved, but I have questions about Brian Johnson as a coordinator. Those are the 2 comments are there. Of course, Brian Johnson now with us. K-Dot, your reaction to those 2?
I don't care about the Eagles. Screw them.
All right, so talk about Cliff then.
Talk about Brian Johnson, because that's the one I think is being overlooked. I think Cliff Kingsbury is going to be a successful offensive coordinator, but he's going to be a successful offensive coordinator because he has Brian Johnson in his ear for passing game and Anthony Lynn in his ear for the running game.
It's a beautiful
He's not having to do it on himself. Everyone's like, oh, he's an air raid guy. I don't think we're going to see an air raid offense. I think we're going to see something different, and it's going to be successful, much like Cliff Kingsbury's offenses have been, at least in the early parts of the season, if you look at all of his offenses, that's when they're successful. Something breaks down towards the end of the season, about midway in the season. I don't know if it's the tape, I don't know if it's whatnot, but he comes into the season with a plan. Cliff Kingsbury does. Now he has 2 experienced coaches with him who are going to help get past that hump. And that is a big deal. Brian Johnson, a sneaky good pickup for Washington. But I will say, Kate, absolutely right. I don't care about the coaches over in Philadelphia. I'm glad it's a 2 out of 10 for Sirianni. He can get canned and stop crying over on the sidelines.
The only thing I'll also say, the Cliff Kingsbury, or the opening stat about the contact with the running backs, I can't stress to you enough how low the bar is with what we were doing offensively and play calling. I have never in my life, seen a more telegraphed run game ever watching a game of football than I did watching the Commanders play last year. And all you had to do was listening to the opposing team's press conferences every fucking week when they told you they knew what was coming.
Yeah, last year was a perfect storm of shit across the board, right? You got a team that's dropping back all the time. Drives aren't being sustained. Clock's not being chewed at all to be merciful to our defense, which was historically bad. It's the worst defense to exist ever since the NFL schedule went to 18 weeks of the regular season. And it's the worst in the last 4 or 5 years from a points per game basis. Just awful. So feel the hype, guys. Feel the hype. We go over to Big Papa Grizzly with a couple comments. First being, Chicago is not the sexy pick. They are the hype pick. They went and furnished the entire house before Caleb moved in. Good for them. But now the expectation is really high. I'm much happier with the air of cautious optimism that surrounds our Commanders right now. The Bears are primed for a huge letdown. Nathan, what do you make of that? Do you agree?
Yeah, I still don't care about other teams right now. Chicago is doing Chicago things. I've seen Caleb Williams a couple times in this offseason. As far as the point of the bar has been set higher for Chicago, and it should be. That they weren't the worst team in the league last year. They had that pick because Carolina was dumb enough to give them a first-round pick, and they were the 9th pick. They're a team that beat the bricks off of these Commanders last season. So yeah, they have a higher bar, which means that that expectations, if they meet them, then that's fine. But if they don't meet them, that's going to be bad. The expectations for Washington are so low that a 7-10 season will be seen as mostly a success as long as Jayden Daniels is healthy and looks the part. Everything else is going to be forgiven. Everything else is going to be like, okay, this was fine. This is Dan Quinn's first season. This was his Jayden Daniels rookie season. There's going to be better things coming. If they 7-10 is the floor, people are going to be ecstatic.
Oh, that'd be great. It'd be great. Kate, out over to you.
I think when we had the conversation about like sexy or sleeper pick, it's really that sneakiness compared to expectation. Chicago has expectation with the money that they've spent, with the Caleb Williams of it all. They do have it. I don't think they can be anybody's sleeper. There are expectations they have to meet. I think in Washington, if I'm being completely honest, the closer and closer we get to the season, and even with the hype factor involved, I have so less care about what the record is compared to just how they look at the end of the season.
Now, that being said, let's go to Big Papa Grizzly's second comment. I saw a video of Jonathan Allen working with Coach Tapp, and the intensity from both those men got me hyped. Right. Watching Jayden Daniels toss dimes to Luke McCaffrey, seeing Luvu slide into a leadership role behind Bobby Wagner, and watching this whole team come together is all big time. This is all what you see from real teams. We are no longer imposters. This is a real goddamn team now. Now watch the entire team baptize, that's in all caps, the rest of the NFL. Get up. Over to you.
That goes to it. It's like, that's what I want to see from this team going forward. I just want to see we're playing hard as hell. I keep going back to that Lions team when what's
Dan Campbell gets there.
Dan Campbell gets there, right?
Yeah.
You saw a difference in just the way that they played as far as their aggressiveness. It didn't matter what the record was at the end of the season. They played as hard as they did at any other given point in the season. That's what I want to see this defense become. That's what I want to see there. I want to see Jayden Daniels making progress over the course of the season. Once again, I don't give a shit. If I'm being completely honest, the lower the record of this fucking team, the more fucking draft assets we get going into next year. I feel good about us long term. I feel great about where we're going long term. We still got salary cap space. There's still
Money.
so much room. I just want to know that we got a core of dudes that are willing to play their asses off collectively.
Nathan, are we baptizing the entire NFL this season?
No. Again, 17-0 until we find out otherwise.
Correct.
But I would pump the brakes on baptizing anybody. We have been the doormat of the league for far too long to then turn around and be the dominant. We're not the 1991 Redskins, okay? It's just not happening this season. But they don't have to, okay? I'm not with Ron Rivera's old. It's a 5-year plan thing. I really don't care for the whole. It's a reconfiguration or whatever that this one's going. They need to turn around quickly. Otherwise, we're going to be back into finding a new coach and we're going to be back here saying like, oh, this time it feels different type deal. But they are set up, like you said, K-Dot, to be successful in the long term. Sign Sam Cosmi to a long-term deal before it becomes too expensive because he has an all-pro nod or whatnot. Make use of that cap space. Don't spend it on a Brandon Ayuk who you have to trade assets and then pay. Be smart about those kind of things and build this team up. Let's see these draft picks earn their spots, not because they were drafted by this regime, but because they are just better players than who was on the roster. Too many times we see a lot of these guys hang on the back ends of rosters because you're just like, well, we spent a 6th-round pick on this guy, so we have to keep him, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to see that. I want to see guys on the roster. If Baptiste is going to be baptizing people, then yeah, let's start him. But if he's going to be too slow, if he's not going to do anything, put him on the practice squad. If somebody else poaches him, let them do that.
Big Papa Grizzly, I'm with you, buddy. Let's baptize this entire fucking league. We're getting after it. John Newton's going to be great too. We go to our last comment over here.
I want to see people get hit.
We got the hard heart. We got the hard stop coming up. Yeah. So Jess Santo, real quick, we got the last one. The Honda Odyssey fucks. You know I'm something of a film enthusiast myself. Quinn is an absolute breath of fresh air in this organization. After 8 to 9 years of Gruden and Rivera mindlessly babbling through their interviews, it is now clear neither one of them had a plan in place, and it really illustrates what the difference is between how winners and losers operate. Quinn is locked in, developing a true team identity, and is very decisive. As training camp progresses, I'm keeping an eye on the wide receiver, DBs, and O-line. There has to be a reason why they let Curtis Samuel and Kendall Fuller go. It was probably money, but they were quality players who still produced and provided depth at needed positions. I think it's going to be fun to watch the wide receiver room battle it out. I think it's going to be McLaurin, then Dotson, Luke McCaffrey, Jamison Crowder, Byron Pringle, Olamide Zaccheaus, or De'Ami Brown at 6. I'm expecting some more trades to happen this offseason. I could see De'Ami Brown, Jamin Davis, and Phil Mathis being traded. They are all still young and hold more value than some of these older vets on the market. They're on rookie deals as well. As far as the media, Riddick, Eisen, Adams, Cowherd, and Orlovsky have us as sleepers this year. I can't believe the preseason starts next week. Let's fucking go. Share this shit. K-Dot, over to you. Your reaction to Jess Santos' comment.
Jess, the Honda Odyssey does fuck. It fucks hard. I actually gotta agree with. I was always just throwing fucking fastballs. I don't know if there would be a lot of trades or anything. I actually think the one thing that I'm actually on the lookout for, even though he's been a dude that we've talked about a lot, we talked about him even today. Davis, I think Davis is in the potential cut category for me. Just looking at the way things are kind of shaking out.
I know Craig Hoffman said that, but no, I don't see that.
It's hard to envision because, especially with how bad this linebacking room has been over the years, we trotted out Miracle Whip, David Mayo. Okay, we had John Bostic on crutches out there with his little roller, old man roller. Okay, Jamin Davis is better than those guys. Like, we've seen him improve year after year after year. We know he can play linebacker. So right. I have a hard time believing that he can't be a factor on this team. I get that the top 2 linebacker spots are taken, right? Bobby Wagner, Luvu got that. Jordan McGee looking like a bright spot, looking like a guy who can see something. And I think he's the first linebacker off the bench. But Jamin Davis is going to have a spot on this roster. I think people need to slow down on him being a cut object.
The only thing I'll say is when Bobby Wagner took his day off or whatever the hell happened with Wagner where he wasn't playing, it was what was it? It was Mykal Walker that took his spot. I'm just saying is like, I thought that said something. I'm not 100% sure, but it was like, that to me kind of screams something. And as far as like what we're going to do defensively, if we're going to do like more of that Buffalo nickel hybrid stuff where you got like a Jeremy Chin, you got guys like that. They love to play around the line.
Paul Martin as well.
There's going to be 2 linebackers most of the time out.
Right. Yeah. So like, I love the idea that Davis is going to be, but I mean, if I'm looking at like depth at edge and then looking at what they're going to do at linebacker, and I'm just starting to play the numbers game, how many receivers are we keeping? How many tight ends are this team going to keep?
What specific linebacker position does Bobby Wagner fill?
I mean, it's middle linebacker. Baby.
He's middle linebacker.
Yeah.
Jamin Davis has proven he's not a middle linebacker. So I wouldn't expect Jamin Davis to come in for Bobby Wagner. That's not his role. We've tried that and it's not successful. One of the things I would say with him, he's an athletic freak. I don't think his instincts are as good as Luvu or Bobby Wagner's.
No.
Right. But he has the ability to close. So when he sees it, he makes that reaction and he goes and attacks, and he's good at that. What the difference maker between the 2 guys ahead of him are the fact that those guys are putting themselves in a position before that reads, right? Before it happens. Their instincts are better. I don't think Jamin Davis has great instincts. I don't see him on this roster past this season. But he absolutely has the ability to be linebacker 3, strong side or weak side, depending on what you put him on, a situational pass rusher over the likes of a rookie in Jordan McGee, who is fine by all means, but that's probably your future, not necessarily your now. Jamin Davis is still the now.
Okay,
Walker, again, middle linebacker.
I get it completely. I understand. And look, I'm not saying Davis is not going to be here. I was just saying that, like, if I'm looking at it from a standpoint of like I still think he makes the team. If I had to pick anything, he makes the team. But if I'm looking at like what we've seen already as far as him doing his pass rush thing, didn't look great. And if we're looking at linebacker, if you got a guy like Anthony Pittman start looking better than him, it just gets hard. It gets really hard. I'm just looking at the numbers.
Fair enough. And so that was the Comment Mailbag. Sorry for rushing the very end of this episode. This was District Divided, a DC sports podcast, more specifically a Washington Commanders podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode featuring Nathan Parry from Ref the District. Thank you so much for joining us today, Nathan. The floor is yours real quick if you want to plug whatever you'd like to in terms of Ref the District, where to find it, etc.
Yeah, so you can find Ref the District here on YouTube. We're also on Facebook, but primarily YouTube's our vessel, and you can find us there. You can find us on Twitter, and we're very active there as well. We go live every Wednesday at 7:30 Eastern, and we love people to join the conversation as it's a lot of fun. So like the mailbag here is great. You can do a live mailbag with Ref the District. That's one of the fun things that we do over there, is just take your questions as we go along. So I appreciate you guys having me on. Absolute pleasure. I know Amit had a hard soft stop, so we might have to, close it out quicker than. But it was good time, good conversation with you two, and I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, and thanks so much. And once again, guys, we're Fridays 2 p.m. next week. We would have already gone through a scrimmage with the Jets, not the preseason game, but we would have had some joint practices where we can see what Aaron Rodgers is up to. So we're going to go ahead and figure that one out Friday 2 p.m. Until then, take it easy. Thanks for listening.
Bye, everybody. Say no to drugs.
In DC, we're just hoping that you listen.